Playing Around Wisconsin, where we offer you a unique look at every public golf course that we have in the Badger State. Enjoy the scenes, the friends, and the swings as we embark on a journey to play around Wisconsin. This is Playing Around Wisconsin.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Playing Around Wisconsin. Likely going to be the last video recorded this year. It's November 2nd as the day of recording. We're at Birchwood Golf Course in Kieler, Wisconsin, the most southwest course in the entire state. Been really excited to play this place for quite some time. Have some friends from down in the area. And so we're right across from Dubuque, Iowa. Again, Birchwood Golf Club. Going to be a cold, breezy day, but an exciting place to play. So let's follow along and experience Birchwood Golf Club.
Immediately when you arrive at Birchwood, you'll see a line of carts ready for use for public play. There's also an ample practice green to chip and putt and get ready for your round. And inside, you'll find a very warm and welcoming bar with plenty of seating and TVs to watch a game before or after your round. From the blue tees, the course measures out to 3,291 yards, white tees 3,025, and from the reds, the front tees, 2,458. Today we decided to play the white tees just because a few of the holes were a little too long for what we wanted to try out. But as you can see from these shots, there is no shortage of beautiful views at Birchwood. Moving on to the first hole, 407 yards from the tips. Again, we're playing the whites today, so we're playing at about 382 yards. Is right down the chute, downhill, fairly straight with a little baby dog leg to the left. Today I'm playing with my good friends Chad, Dave, friends of mine from Madison who we played a lot of golf with, just traveling around the Madison area. So as we got started on the first hole, we were able to find the fairway, or the general regions of it, some of us a little bit longer than the other. Something you notice immediately when you arrive, and if you have any familiarity with the area, is that you can anticipate on not having a single flat lie on the golf course. And that extends to the greens too. The first green is pretty large, sloping from back to front and left to right as you're approaching the green from the fairway. One thing that we all agreed upon, especially given the time of the year, is that the course is in really good shape. A lot of leaves all over the place, a couple of marks on the greens, but overall it was a very fair challenge this late in the year. Moving on to the second hole, it has a very similar setup to the first, just a little bit shorter, and you have to hit it over a bit of a ravine to get to the fairway. Like the first hole, it slopes pretty hard from right to left, and the trees through the fairway can come into play if you hit the ball a little bit too far just with the dog leg to the left. So I decided to hit a 3-wood as I typically do off of these shorter par 4s, while Dave and Chad both hit driver. But as we approach the fairway, again, there's no flat lie on this golf course. Taking this shot from on top of the hill on the right side of the fairway above the cart path, you can see just how far it drops down from right to left. Nothing but trouble on the left. There's course boundary on the left, and hitting towards the Mississippi River, it's kind of exciting to play this second hole with the anticipation of what is coming up next. I was pretty fortunate to miss the trouble on the left off of the tee, but still had a little bit of work to do to get the ball high enough from about 100 yards over the trees overhanging the left side. So missing my second shot short, I still had a long putt up the slope towards the back of the green to try to finish up for par. Dave and Chad had a little bit of squirreliness on this hole, needless to say, but Chad did a nice job of laying up to there. I missed my par putt here, and missing this putt this way was a harbinger of things to come for the rest of the round on the greens for me. The third hole, the first par 3 on the golf course, has some of the best views that I've ever seen on a golf course. Memorial benches at golf courses seem to really trip a trigger for me. I love that people have the opportunity to honor the memory of loved ones and friends at places that were really special to them when they were alive. The third hole itself is not overly complicated as a par 3. Neither one of them at this course are that terribly difficult. The third green is pretty big and doesn't have a lot of trouble around it, so you can take the risk of really trying to throw a dart tight to the flag. None of us were very successful in doing so, but we had pretty simple chip shots to try to get the ball close for potentially a chip and birdie, or at least a tap in par. I was the closest, but left myself the longest par putt. I was happy to get the shot at our par putts from this angle because you can see actually one of the flatter putts that we experienced that day. And also too, in the background right behind Dave, you can see some of the outskirts of Dubuque. Nicely done for par for my friend. And like I mentioned on the last hole, that lip out was a harbinger of things to come. So another lip out par putt, tap in bogey, not my favorite finish on a simple par 3. The fourth hole brings us back east away from the river. From the white tees, it's not that complicated of a par 4. Pretty short from where we were playing it that day. The blue tees were put forward because it's so late in the year, so we didn't get that much of an advantage from the white tees. We all hit solid tee shots for ourselves, leaving ourselves some slightly uphill approach shots to the green. None of us really hit the darts we were hoping for from the fairway, unfortunately, so we had a lot of extra hard work to do to finish. Another lip out, which is always very exciting. But as you can see here, it's another large green, pretty big target to hit into. The green itself runs back to front and then left to right as you're approaching from the fairway. And knowing that now, I think we could have all done a little bit better to finish strong on that hole. Hole number 5, the first par 5 of the day, is a pretty beastly hole, all things considered, blue or white tees. The two sets of trees on either side of the fairway are about 260 yards out, so a pretty good aiming point to gauge yourself from the blue or white tees, or even the reds if you're playing forward. Thankfully, there's not a lot of trouble on either side of the fairway, so it's worth it to just grip and rip and blast away with your driver on this hole. Where things get tricky is the second shot or your approach shot. So a well-struck drive should leave you an opportunity to hopefully try to reach the green into or get close to it. I had the best chance of the 3, but did not do very well with my hybrid to approach. So I was left a punch shot to get myself up to the green. So it gets really, really narrow as you get closer to the green. So keep that in mind as you're making your decision on the second shot or how you're going to play this hole. I think the real concern here is not so much that it gets tight, but that it drops off on both sides if you miss to the left or the right as you get closer to the green. The green does have a shelf to it, so if you go deep on the right or behind it, you're going to have a difficult shot to get back up to the hole. Another large green to hit into, so trying to blast away and get there in 2 might not be the smartest choice unless you have a surefire shot to the cup. So no shame in laying up if that's what you decide to do on this par 5. So if it's your first time coming out to play here, make sure you have a plan in mind before you attack this par 5. Blast away with your driver, but make sure you're planning accordingly as you approach the green. So the first par 3 had the river on your left. This par 3 has the river on your right. So I like this as a variety compared from one par 3 to the next. Deep is dead, and so is to the right of this green here. So despite the fact that this hole's a little bit shorter than the first par 3, I would argue that this one does have a little bit more trouble than the first. The green as well does have a pretty solid back tier to front tier as well. And I hit my shot and spun it back a good 2 or 3 feet from where it landed on the green. So the slope does run back to front, and it does have a pretty significant tier to it. Dave had a little bit of a pull off of his tee shot. Chad had to really give this one the beans to get it up to the hole. A really solid putt up the slope. I wish I could have learned something from him, as I left this one incredibly short. A solid 2-par putt for Chad, something he can be proud of. Well played hole. And a beautiful shot to see me miss another par putt today. I can't get enough of that view looking over the Mississippi River. Now, unfortunately, we don't have too many great river views finishing up on the golf course, but we do have 3 solid finishing holes to tend to. The 7th hole comes out of the chute to an uphill second shot. Pretty significant slope on the left side coming down to the right with a bunch of trees to tend to on the right side of the fairway. Like I mentioned on the first hole, there's rarely a flat surface to hit from on this golf course. Something to keep in mind on this hole is that the green is protected by a sand trap on the left, so keep that in mind, especially if you have to go pin hunting like we were going here on this hole today. So, pretty excited to have a birdie putt myself. You'd be surprised, but I did not make it. I will admit I'm getting a little tired of sharing a lot of tap-in pars on the internet for the entire world to see. But I'm happy to slow this clip down so we can all admire Chad's birdie, and the only birdie our group had the entire day. Not to forget about old Davey here, but he had a makeable putt just like mine. His for par, mine was for birdie, but neither one of us could capitalize. Coming back, the 8th hole, another par 4, presents a certain amount of challenge only from the fact that you have a considerably significant uphill second shot from wherever you're coming in from, and the fairway does drop off on the left-hand side. So if you wind up missing the fairway to the left, you're going to have a lot more uphill to deal with. Dave and I found the fairway, but Chad wound up slicing his tee shot, so had a lot more up the slope to deal with than Dave and I. All 3 of us had about 10 to 15 yards of slope to deal with our club selection for our second shots. Between the temperature, the wind, and the slope, all of us left our shots a lot shorter than we wanted to. You can see from this angle behind my chip shot that the green goes from back to front by a significant amount. There's a shelf at the back of the green where the pin was that day, and I barely missed getting it up on top with my chip shot. A lot longer of a par putt than anybody would want, especially if you're chipping from that close to the green. So when you come out and play here, just keep in mind the slope to deal with on your second shot. Just make sure you have enough club coming up that slope. Our last hole of the day, just like our first par 5, this one's a beastly one as well. Nothing but trouble on the left and a little bit of trouble on the right to deal with, especially because the fairway and the rough drop down towards the 8th hole that runs parallel to this. One thing I really appreciate about this golf course is the challenge that does present itself anytime you miss the fairway. Even if you do find it, you're not going to have a lot of flat surfaces to hit off of. Again, like I said a few times already, there's no real flat place to hit. So if you miss, it gets worse. And of course, if you're in the woods, there's not much you can do from there. Adding to the challenge of this hole is a water hazard that's up ahead on the right from where I'm standing. That water does remain in play if you do not hit a very strong second shot or approach shot to the green, but it does give you about 50 to 60, if not a little bit more yards to the green. So just make sure if you're hitting aggressively towards the cup, make sure you have enough club to clear the water. I tried and failed miserably to hit a low and stinging 3-wood a little bit closer to the green than wound up happening, but wound up cutting way across the ball and left a lot of work left to do to get to the green. The green has a right to left bias if you're approaching from the fairway, and like most of them have a good back to front slope as well, especially dropping off towards the front. Not quite a false front, but definitely something to keep in mind. I had a pretty decent birdie opportunity, but surprise, surprise, I missed the putt and ruined this shot that we actually took in one take. But leave it to Dave and Chad to save the day and actually have a pretty styling finish to this video. But I cannot say enough positive things about Birchwood Golf Course. The views on the par 3s are exquisite, the challenge is fair, and the people are welcoming and inviting. I've had the opportunity to play a lot of golf courses in the calendar year of 2024. 58 in total, to be honest. But what I will say is that Birchwood needs to be on your list of places to play. The avid players and casual players alike will appreciate what this course has to offer. You can take my word for it, but I suggest you come check it out yourself.